Hey 3DMJers, this is Andrea Valdez and you're listening to the 3D Muscle Journey podcast. Today I'm talking to our team's mental health consultant, Amanda Rizzo, and our chief science officer, Eric Helms, all about confidence. Now, confidence is obviously a very loaded word, and the presence or absence of it can definitely affect the lives of every human regardless of whether they're an athlete or not. So we talk about it as a general personal quality to start, and then as the episode progresses, we talk about it specifically as it pertains to the lifters who are listening. Confidence or lack of confidence can be why you started training or dieting in the first place. It can be something you've gained from your sport or something that sports has taken from you. It's necessary to perform well on competition day, but too much of it might hinder your performance as well or keep you from learning or growing in the long run. In short, confidence is certainly a lot of things, so we did our best to tackle it from as many angles as possible in the short hour that we had for this podcast, and we hope you guys genuinely find this conversation useful. As always, if you have any feedback or comments on this episode, go to 3dmusclejourney.com or our YouTube channel at youtube.com/team3dmj and leave it under podcast number 157. Let's go ahead and dive in. Here is All About Confidence with Amanda Rizzo and Eric Helms. Confidence has a lot of meanings to a lot of people at different times, right? When I think about it, it's like it could be cocky, conceited, or just like proud and comfortable, or, all those things. So maybe before we talk about it towards our specific audience of lifters, athletes, bodybuilders, things like that, maybe like what does it mean to you, Rizzo, as like a professional? Is there a specific definition that you like to use? How is it defined in your world, or like how does it present in general in your practice as a therapist?
I would say my perspective of confidence is just being very sure of yourself, knowing who you are, knowing your beliefs and your values, staying grounded in it. And if you're ever confronted by someone or challenged by someone, you don't sway and you're very sure of yourself. And knowing that you have the ability to execute things, follow through on things, and just be true to yourself. Right. That's what I would say is like the basis of confidence.
Man, that goes so sure of yourself. That kind of tells me both things. Like you know your abilities, but you're also like realistic about your abilities, right? Because I guess when it turns to like cocky and whatever is like you're sure of yourself, but maybe too sure, or like it's they don't match. Dissonance, is that the word?
Dissonance, yeah.
Okay.
There may be some dissonance there when you get into the realm of cockiness.
Yeah. How do those sound different to you, Eric?
I think, it's actually making me think of the difference between a researcher who is not open-minded versus one who is, and how problematic it can be. So a researcher might be someone who's really well-read, has gone through multiple checks and balances to make sure that the study they're going to conduct is done properly, the design's in point. Like a PhD student will have gone through an initial application with the supervisors looking it over, and then it goes through a proposal process where the supervisors go back and forth, and it goes through an external examiner, and then they have to actually defend the research they did in their thesis to get their PhD, and then they decide to submit that to a journal, and then it goes through that peer review, and then it finally gets published. At all points in that process, there needs to be a certain level of humility and openness to maybe I've missed this, and maybe I can't know everything, and it's better for me to get peer review. But at the same time, you also have to have a lot of confidence to go through that process. So I think there's a big difference between kind of the other side of the sword. To confidence on the other side is rigidity. On the other side is a unwillingness to take on board critique. And there is essentially a defense of ego, and they can appear very outwardly similarly. That I think it is. That's why there's all these distinctions. Like people say false confidence, or there's a difference between self-efficacy and self-esteem, for example. And to me, when I think of confidence, I think it's the quote unquote good kind, if you will, where you know what you know, but you know that you don't know everything. And you're able to make decisions. You're not paralyzed by a lack of self-confidence or self-belief or self-efficacy. But at the same time, you can also be flexible, and you can take on new information, change your view, and essentially you have a growth mindset that you have the capacity to improve or be successful. I think it's more about your ability and the way you see yourself, rather than necessarily this moment or this instance being, inflexible or unwilling to change your perspective or something like that.
Yeah. Like when someone comes to your practice, do they can you know that you are overconfident? Can you know that you're underconfident? Like what are the things that you look for, either as this is a positive thing or this is needs some work? Like, do people identify that themselves, or do you help them?
I think people easily, like the patterns I've seen, it's easier for people to recognize that they have a lack of confidence versus too much confidence or cockiness. Usually the ego is more in the way when it comes to the cocky side.
Like you have to help them find that, probably.
Right. I would probably help them distinguish the dissonance that you said, where they're not executing how they may be presenting themselves or speaking towards. But your original question was, remind me again.
It wasn't a clear one by any means. It was more, I think you answered one part of it. Like, do people ever know? Or I guess one of the hallmarks that Eric said is like they don't really know necessarily because of ego that it's actually said false confidence, or like it's getting in the way of maybe their progress for whatever their goal is. But on the flip side, like you said, people might come to you and, like you said, say that they're lacking confidence. And like, how do they identify that? What are the things that come in as signs of like, I'm not where I want to be in terms of it?
Yeah, and with the lack of confidence, the individual is focusing more on the negative, focusing on the areas that they do need to improve or their weaknesses, maybe one-off times that they haven't performed the way that they wanted to. And so that they'll come in presenting that. They'll just only be speaking towards that. So I would help them, redirect their focus towards, okay, where are the exceptions here? Where are the times that you have been successful? And let's amplify that and expand it more. Because very rarely does someone like not execute or present themselves that they want in the way that they want to be.
Yeah.
It's just where their focus is directed.
And that's a good segue into, I guess, 3D here as lifters and everything. I think, and Eric, I'm sure you could elaborate on this, but a lot of people get into our sports of strength and altering their physique to sometimes to find confidence, sometimes to create it, sometimes to be able to display it outwardly. How often do you see things like that, Eric?
I think it's a pretty common thing. A lot of people are drawn to physique sport because of it. It's a challenge. And I think ultimately that's not a bad thing at all. I did a poor job really getting to the heart of what I wanted to say before about how I kind of view what confidence is. And I'm glad you asked the question in this way. Yeah, so take two. I think true confidence to me is basically the same thing as self-efficacy. So someone with self-efficacy, they could do their first show ever. They have no idea what to do. They don't know how to train. They don't know how to diet. They don't know how to live their life. They don't know how to do cardio in that situation. Someone who doesn't actually have self-efficacy has to deal with that in some way. So to be clear, self-efficacy is your belief that you can do something, whatever it is, that you are a person capable of learning, change, and overcoming challenges, right? And then you have some locus of control over that. You have agency in your own life to overcome challenges. Someone without self-efficacy, if they were to do a prep, they either wouldn't do it in the first place because they don't believe they can meet that challenge, or they would have to deal with that dissonance like we were talking about of not wanting to appear like they wouldn't be able to handle this. So that could look like narcissism, where it's all about you. You're perfect. You put on this perfect example. You're always right. And everything you do is this carefully constructed house of cards to defend this internal ego that actually doesn't have self-efficacy. Or that could come across as boasting or arrogance, the fake it till you make it. Like, I actually don't think I can do this. I don't know how to do it, but I'm going to pretend I'm a badass now, even though I'm not. Someone with true confidence and self-efficacy, when they come into the sport of bodybuilding, will very comfortably, maybe not very comfortably, but will be able to say, hey, I don't know anything about this. I lifted weights in high school and I've never watched my nutrition. I'm here to learn, and I'm confident that I can be a novice, and I can move from novice to intermediate. I think the problem is when you don't really have that self-efficacy, because when you don't have that self-efficacy, you either don't do it at all, because you don't have a growth mindset, you don't have the self-belief, or you come into it and you can't accept that you're a novice because that's scary. It means that you can't actually do it. So you pretend to be an intermediate, or you pretend to have certain skills. This is the type of person in a conversation where you go, well, you probably want to do this, this, and this. And they go, oh, yeah, I know that. Yeah. So I follow this person. I know this guy. I've been doing that since 1985. I almost did a show one time, but then I just thought that there wasn't enough competition. We've all met those people. Like, they have a story, they have a reason, they have a way that they're defending their ego, and they can't appear weak, they can't appear unknowledgeable because they don't really believe they can do it. And it's a defense mechanism. So I think that's what false confidence is it's not willing to put yourself in a position where you are the novice. Because someone who has self-efficacy, when they're a novice, they know, I'll eventually be an intermediate, however long it takes. I have that capacity. But if you can never be an intermediate, well, shit, I better pretend to be one.
Yeah.
You pointed towards a very key feature to those who are more boastful, they're more narcissistic, and they tend to avoid those situations. They'll talk smack about it, but you won't see them deliver. You won't see them perform. And I'm also curious as to what you guys have experienced with athletes. Have you seen athletes from when you first start with them have a lack of confidence, and then bodybuilding slowly transition them out of it, as well as the inverse? Have you guys seen that?
Yeah, go ahead, Eric.
Both, yeah. I think I've definitely seen people who don't have a coach, are in it for the wrong reasons, they're protecting their ego, and they don't maybe have a whole lot of awareness of that. They're the type of person who will scope out how many people are competing in the show. Are they doing the novice? Are they doing the open? Can I compete in Masters the year I'm turning 40? Or do I have to wait till next year? And, they put themselves in positions where they can win with the lowest barrier to winning. You see that a lot, like the trophy hunters, the people who do small shows purposely, the people who always have a reason why they didn't perform better, and how you're always seeing me at 80%, because if they truly did go all out and fail, it would confirm those core beliefs that they're not good enough. I think a lot of people are drawn to bodybuilding for that reason, because they're trying to fight against it. It's kind of this vehicle for both defending the ego and trying to maybe finally break through that barrier and realize that I am good enough, I can be good. And I think it's very difficult to do that on your own, identify that, change those behaviors, and change your mindset. But I know that I've helped a number of people do that as a coach. And because it goes hand in hand with them enjoying the process more, because when you think everyone else is looking at you, like depression, self-loathing, not feeling good enough, it becomes this kind of sick inversion where you become, even though you don't believe you're good, you're super self-absorbed. Because everyone's always, what do people think about me? Everything comes down to I'm being judged and I'm judging myself, and all the focus is on me. And it's not because they think they're amazing. It's not because they think they're the shit. It's that they think I'm the imposter in the room. Everyone else knows what they're doing. I'm the moron. I'm not good enough. And to kind of acknowledge that is freeing. And then all of a sudden it opens you up to new possibilities of why you're doing bodybuilding. It's not to prove to the world that you're not crappy, and really to prove to yourself. It's an opportunity for you to put forth your best foot and see where that is and improve upon it. So it helps them get towards a growth mindset, to building self-efficacy. It can help them have intrinsic motivation for competing and not just for getting a trophy to, kind of put a shitty little like paint over on the hole in the wall of their actual self-confidence and ego. And I think a good coach can identify that, help them focus on different things, give them new options to believe in it. But I think some people never get that opportunity to have someone help them see that, and I'm sure you can think of a lot of people, Amanda, where you're like, man, you should probably explore that in therapy. I'm not going to come out here and tell you that in a random conversation at Denny's. I'm assuming everyone eats dinner at Denny's. I don't know, but yeah. So I've definitely seen a small wound turn into a festering, obvious hole in someone's psyche through bodybuilding, where it was unaddressed, and they eventually burn out, or they just live in this state of delusion almost. I won the show, this, that, and it's like you did, like you're the only person in that class, and you've competed novice like 60 times. You're not a novice. You're doing it so you can collect trophies or whatever. And then you can also see people who work with a coach and they're able to help someone see that part of themselves that they don't like, and then they can find some peace with it and move forward. So I've seen both.
Yeah, I know that not just bodybuilding, but sports in general, I think has been a vehicle for myself, for a lot of the kids I coached in gymnastics, for a lot of the athletes that I've coached in bodybuilding. So I know, like on the flip side, with me, and like I said, I think a lot of the children that I worked with, you kind of see that their physical abilities create that one first lesson of like Eric said, a growth mindset, like, oh shit, I'm doing something, like I am changing my body, I am learning a skill, and then, man, I can't, especially adolescents, I remember seeing it repeatedly when I was coaching gymnastics for like 8-10 years. It's like the quiet kid as they get better, I know they're growing up too, and they're around other kids, that it's like a positive space, they're learning things. It's such a like incubator for having, I don't know, just sports in general. I'm so passionate about how much they helped me grow up, and how many times I've seen kids come out of their shell, and then vice versa. Like if I see them with their non-gymnastics friends, like some kids would crawl into a shell and you see them come alive at practice. You see them outside the gym and they crawl into a shell again. So it's like, I know that's kids and I know that's gymnastics, but I've felt that same way and had people do that in, at Golds, they're beasts. And then at college, they don't talk to anybody, so it's a fun thing to watch.
Yeah, I do think the environment that someone's in, especially as a young child, can foster or hinder the growth of confidence. And in my experience, my foundation was through karate, through doing martial arts, and then also, and also playing the violin. Like those two different worlds definitely created a nice foundation for me. I did lose some confidence along the way for myself, and then through bodybuilding, that helped increase it again.
So is that a good thing or not a good thing? Like to have your confidence closely associated with one activity? Like, is it a tool to bring it out further in other places? Or is it like, this is the one place I can be myself, and then everywhere else it like, I don't know, like, is that good or bad or both? Go ahead, Eric.
I think what you're highlighting is if someone only thinks that their ability to succeed exists in that one realm, that's probably indicative that they don't really have true self-efficacy. Like, yeah, I can play the violin, but I'm actually shit. I don't know why I can play the violin, I relate to that. I think I used to set myself extremely high barrier of entry for me to try something and do it. Like if I didn't feel like I was a prodigy at whatever thing I tried, I'm not doing that anymore. That's an opportunity to feel like shit, you know? I think that's part of the reason why I never learned to ride a bike until I was like 20, you know, is amazing. Yeah, because I hopped on the bike, fell off, didn't know what I was doing, looked stupid in front of other people. You know, I ran. It was fine, you know? You know, I got embarrassed in front of other people, and it made that part of me that was insecure feel, oh, this is the truth. And I'm like, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm going to avoid that scenario. And I had I think it was a lot of the reason why I would get B's and take like AP or advanced courses and just get a B to get the bump in my GPA. So I pushed myself to get an A and didn't, then, oh yeah, I knew it. I'm not that good at anything. So I remember, I had to get past a certain level of fear before I'd go, I'm going to invest in this and just see how good I can be and just see where it goes, and that's okay. I'm good enough. And that was bodybuilding for me. And then bodybuilding became the first domino that fell on my education, being an entrepreneur, being a supervisor, doing everything that I've done from that point was initiated by me lifting weights and seeing progress. So I think, Andrea, you're totally right that sports is a super obvious vehicle for giving you the opportunity to succeed. And I think it's also quite tragic when parents or young sport coaches don't realize that. You know, like if you're like a middle school coach and you're getting out your own past athlete angsts, or if you're like a failed, singer as a parent and you're trying to make your child into the next voice, you're doing it because of your own insecurities rather than seeing it as, hey, this is an opportunity for me to get even that third string free safety to realize, hey, you're getting faster at these drills, or you're getting better at tackles, or you're learning the plays, or yeah, you're singing better every day. Your voice, you can have more range, you can control it, you know, instead of it being just about performance at such a young age, because then it's just a binary thing. Did you do good or not? Not good enough, or you're good enough.
Right. It's
and
black
I think
or
that
white.
Yeah, and you really set someone up for, I'm not good enough, that's the standard. And if I'm good enough, then I get love or acceptance, or I get to play, or I get rewards, rather than being able to see progress. And then they go, yeah, I learned to play football. And when I was a young kid, I learned to sing when I was a young kid. So why wouldn't I be able to pole vault or play the guitar, you know? And I think that can be squandered at such a critical developmental time. I'm not a developmental psychologist, but I can tell you from my own personal experiences in life that I think my first exposures to team sports weren't good ones. And it took me getting exposed to individual sport where I could much more easily see progress. Like I wasn't great at track, but I did have a little bit of belief, like, yeah, I'm reasonably athletic. And then I saw that in the Air Force again. And then when I tried lifting weights, I was like, every week I get the opportunity to make a number go up. It was so much more obvious than, waiting until I had to run a race, or next time I had to do my PT test or whatever. So yeah.
Right. It was more tangible for you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Something that I want to touch on, that in my couple years that I was coaching physique athletes, would see often and was intriguing to me, but also sad to me, and we've talked about it many times on this podcast, is how people come to us, people come to this sport, people come to changing their physique as a way to fix something else. If I'm body confident, that'll change my life. And I did my best, but it was always a really hard way to work with someone who, okay, you say you want to look a certain way, but you're not eating and you're doing 6 days of cardio, and it's like, well, what we need to do on a physiological level is obvious, but and I've been there. I'm not comfortable looking this way if I don't look the way that a fitness model looks, if I don't feel like I'm attractive to potential mates or whatever. Like if I don't have confidence there, then what am I? And it's a hard fix, man. Go ahead, Eric. He's nodding.
Yeah. I think this comes down to self-efficacy once again. And I know Amanda's going to have some good stuff on this. Like if someone comes to you and they've had some life crisis and they want confidence now, they're ready to change, but they don't really have the belief that they have that agency to change, then yeah, they're going to, like, someone who believes that they can change their body is comfortable not having that body now because they know it's temporary. Someone who is afraid that they're always going to be stuck in this body they hate, they're going to look for quick fixes. They're going to be eating 1,200 calories and they should be eating 1,800. They're going to be afraid of bulking. They're going to be doing cardio every day. They're going to be afraid of gaining body fat because it's permanent. I can't change things. I'm just getting beat down by the world. I've always been in this crappy body. It's a reflection of the rest of my life. I've decided I want to change it, but deep down, I don't really think I can. So I'm going to do something immediately to fix it. And why am I not investing in the long term? Because I can't change. So I need to find a quick fix now. And I think that's just one of the many ways people try to deal with that cognitive dissonance between wanting change, but not actually believing they can change. They need it immediately. That urgency stems from that sense of insecurity. Because someone who's confident that, yeah, it might take me 2 years, and I'll get there, they can observe small differences and keep their head down and keep chugging. But someone who doesn't see immediate results, it's just confirmation all the time that, yeah, I'm not good enough. I don't have the ability to change. I'm stuck like this. So they'll look for supplements. They'll look for quick fixes. They're more likely to take drugs, all the above. That's not the only motivations to do those things. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. But that's a huge part of it.
Yeah, and it goes back to their focus as well. They're just constantly focusing on what's not changing, what's not working. Whereas someone that does have the confidence and maybe their goal would be achieved in 2 years, they start noticing the small changes. They're confident in themselves that those things will start progressing versus the other person. And I don't want to just like bash people who are on the other side of the spectrum, who are overconfident, who are narcissistic, or like they're more boastful, because that is serving the same purpose as the other individual that is, they lack self-esteem, they lack self-efficacy. They're trying to protect themselves.
So it's the same problem, just different ways that they're trying, the different venues of coping with it, I guess. Okay. Mm-hmm. Man. And then you don't want to shit on the fact that a lot of people, when they they lose their first 10 pounds, say, and they're 40 pounds overweight, they lose 10, and their entire life changes. Not because they went from gross to sexy in their mind, just because they feel lighter. I know I said they have agency now. They've proven to themselves they can do things or whatever. But also, like, I don't know, like there's a lot of diet culture, people educating against diet culture that I've seen on the internet that are like saying that certain places on the internet are finding pockets where they won't post transformation pictures because it promotes the fact that the starting body was a bad body. You know what I mean? And then you have people, and I've seen people be like, well, it changed my life. It was a very positive thing. Like, why can't I share it? And it all comes down to, I guess, I actually don't want to say that. There's no way it all comes down to one thing. But like the way if it comes from like, I'm confident because I feel sexy now, or I'm confident because I've proven to myself I can do things now. And I guess those are good or bad ways of looking at it, or healthy versus unhealthy.
Yeah, I think you can have the same outward content on social media that could be considered quote unquote diet culture, but one can be reflective of an improvement in self-efficacy and realizing I have the capacity to change, and it just happened to be expressed through body composition. Or it can be, like I said before, you've got a hole in the wall of your ego and you just have spackling over it. Like you said, your life is in shambles. You don't have self-efficacy, but you starved yourself, did a bunch of cardio, trained, and did a 12-week transformation, and now you feel better. But it's at best a short-term fix because you didn't actually address the fact that you don't believe you can change. Your self-deception is the most prevalent but most tragic form of it. And going back to what you said, how societally we don't like boasting. The favorite thing in the West that we like to see online is we love to see people just build themselves up so we can watch them fall, right? I mean, reality television is all about people with delusions of grandeur and then looking dumb, and we can go to work and be like, did you see what that dumb bitch said? Or what a tool. Did you see what he posted on his Twitter? Yeah. We love that because it's not societally acceptable. And if we were to really take a, emotionally mature look at it, exactly what Amanda said is true. Like, it's the same thing. It's the same thing as the shy person who, never came out of their shell or never actually achieved the things they wanted because they had a very clear coping method of not being good enough. They played it out. Someone else couldn't deal with that cognitive dissonance and couldn't live with the acceptance and the belief that I'm shit. So they pretended to not be shit, and everyone else could see it. And sometimes they even succeed, but we can't wait till they fail because they're arrogant. They're loud. They do end zone dances, etc. And I think, I think that's a really good example of sometimes where in sport, we mistake arrogance and confidence. And sometimes they overlap because it's such an obvious vehicle for building self-efficacy. When you see true confidence and that belief, like, yeah, I'll get that. I'm gonna set that record. Or, I'm very confident we're gonna get the ring this year. And it's like, it's the first game of the season. When they actually don't get the ring or when they get knocked out for the first time, the way you can tell if it's true confidence is if it shakes them, if it rattles them. If they become the boxer who never fights the same because they finally got hit in the chin, or if that team just totally collapses after their first loss. But real confidence means that you believe you will win. You've put in the work to do it, and you lose and you go, okay, well, that's all right. This is a barrier or something I need to overcome, but I can handle that too and still get there. You might revise your opinion of the season. Man, I don't think we're going to win, but here's what we need to work on next season. And I think most people just simply don't understand the kind of self-efficacy that gets built from sport. And especially, and I can say this because I'm not this type of athlete, especially in combat sports and in team sports, they don't understand the type of aggressive competitiveness that goes hand in hand with building that self-efficacy, and that it can come off as arrogant to someone who spends more time playing World of Warcraft than they do, basketball or something like that. And there's not that there aren't downsides to it, but this is actually something on Iron Culture. We had Taylor Atwood and Ellis McLean to talk about the way they look at powerlifting, which is an individual sport, but they were both very high-level football players and also track athlete in the case of LS. And they view everything with a very, like, they're always competing with other people. Like, I'm watching you in the warm-up room. I think of it this way.
That's true.
You can't handle me, stuff like that. And I don't view it that way, but I understand where it's coming from. And it's not boasting. It's not false confidence. It's just a very different way of managing all of that because they're always in competition with someone else. And they learn from those hits. They don't like to lose, but they know that loss is a pathway to further growth, something to overcome, rather than I'm going to try to play the worst teams. That's kind of what we see in bodybuilding, where you can always protect your ego. You don't get that opportunity in team sports and in combat sports. So it kind of breeds it out of you, especially if you're successful.
Right. It's a chance to just refocus and receive the feedback that you're getting from either the critique or the loss, versus just avoiding it. So I think someone with true confidence is able to take that feedback and say, okay, I need to improve in this area. I can do it. I know how to, map it out and plan it out, and I'm just going to execute.
What's going on, 3DMJers? Eric Helms here. Thanks for listening to our podcast. I just want to take a second to tell you about MASS, Monthly Applications in Strength Sport. This is a monthly research review that I put out with Greg Nuckols, Dr. Mike Zerdos, and Dr. Eric Trexler, where we cover the most up-to-date, peer-reviewed research in the world of strength and physique sport that's directly relevant to your practice as a coach or an athlete. We provide our reviews in written format, but also, since you enjoy our podcast, in audio roundtable reviews where we discuss the research in depth. Finally, we also do video concept reviews where we cover a broader topic in video format for your learning. For fitness professionals, you can take quizzes on mass content and earn continuing education credits for most of the biggest certifying bodies in the fitness industry. If you want to sign up and get a subscription, head over to 3dmusclejourney.com and click on the Products tab. Thanks for your time, and thanks for listening.
I like what you're talking about with LS and Taylor, right? Taylor Elwood, is that who you said the other one was? Because it shows or illustrates the difference between like confidence in myself and every day and my abilities as a athlete in this career versus like game day hype up, which is, I mean, I know I'm a different person on like meet day or competition day or whatever, and like LS and them, like I know LS very well. He's a teddy bear outside of that. You know, I've seen him cry many times. Like it's a switch, and that's not a bad switch, right? And another way I think about that is I'm much more level-headed when I'm coaching someone. Same with you, Eric, I'm sure, and Amanda with your clients. Like I'm confident in my ability to help this person see through their subjectivity so that we can go somewhere together. Versus on myself, I can be a straight asshole. Also with myself, I can be, like when I need to turn something on, I will be like, all right, don't be a bitch, let's go. You know, like my self-talk when I'm about to try a 1RM versus like when I look back on like, okay, it was a hard day, maybe you should save your training day for tomorrow. Like there's all these different voices at different times. And it's like, I guess in this conversation, it's maybe we could talk about how there's a difference between like athletic overall career and like what you need to get shit done at certain times.
Yeah, this goes back to what Amanda said about feedback. I think what you never see or never gets publicized or you never watch it, or it would just be weird to see it, is someone who's on a losing team or who's getting knocked out and just a bad fighter talking shit and boasting all the time. You just don't see it because in team sports, there's feedback. You think you're the best?
Yeah.
All right, let's see how it goes on the weekend. You got your shit snapped up. Okay. You have to do something with that, you know? There's no way for you to maintain that delusion of grandeur if you just got your shit pushed in, you know? And I think bodybuilding, competitive bodybuilding is not a great vehicle because it's subjective. So it creates a place where someone can really defend that ego more effectively. You know, like powerlifting it's not as good as like boxing or anything like that, but man, it's better than, like, you didn't lift the weights. You've never lifted the weights. You've never totaled more than 1,200. You shouldn't talk shit like you're going to total 1,500. You can blame it on an injury. You can blame it on something outside of you so that you don't actually have the agency to do it. But ultimately, you get immediate correction. But in bodybuilding, man, the level of delusion that I've seen maintained sometimes when people compete in easy shows and blame politics, man, people have had whole careers where they blame politics, you know, and they never actually get to the point where they get to that core root of insecurity. So I think ultimately feedback is the most important thing. And if you are not great at giving yourself that feedback, then it can be incredibly helpful to have a coach. You know, if, like you were talking, Andrea, like your self-talk probably has pros and cons. You can flip that switch and push yourself really hard. But sometimes if the self-talk is always quit being a bitch and you're actually like pushing yourself past a labrum injury, you know, maybe it shouldn't be quit being a bitch, you know? And that's just one example. Yeah, you know? So
Right.
we've all been in those places where, because we're inside of our own head, the feedback we can give ourselves is, like you said, push past that subjectivity. That's not really an option, you know? And it's difficult to give yourself the feedback you need if that feedback is coming from a place of being triggered, you know?
Right. And being able to sit with it, like, be honest with yourself. rather than, let's say, someone on one end of the spectrum where they're narcissistic. If they fail or they just don't perform as expected, they will externally blame their loss, versus on the other end of the spectrum, someone that lacks confidence internally blames themselves, even though they're coming from the same perspective. Like they lack that self-confidence. It's just being presented differently.
Yeah.
There's actually, I was just thinking about this. If you're playing a game every weekend, you have to go through the whole, all the stages of grief in 6 days. You know, you have to go through denial, and you can't stay there because you lost. You know, you can get angry. Okay. You can be sad, but in the end, you have to get back on the field next week. So you've got to get your shit together. And that's one of the things from talking in that same podcast about LS and Taylor hate losing, you know? And when you hate something, you try to avoid that feeling. And if you're in team sports or one-on-one sports, the only obvious way to not feel losing is to win. And the only way to win is to improve. And to improve, you have to have a growth mindset. So that the timing of the feedback, I think, is also important. And if bodybuilding, you know, you're competing in like 2 shows every 3 years, you can kind of be like, oh, forget the 2011 season. That was, you know, judging, you know, like, so I think I think hopefully, you know, withstanding what I said earlier about, you know, bad coaches and bad parents doing it for the wrong reasons, if you're enrolled in sport at a young age and you stick with it and you are forced to deal with the cognitive dissonance of losing, but then having to play again, not wanting to lose, so what do I do? Shit, maybe I fake an injury, you know, outside. I remember these thoughts going through my head when I used to play like Little League, like, all right, can they just put me in the outfield? Because ain't no 6-year-olds hitting shit out here. I don't want to have the opportunity to drop the ball. I don't want to have the opportunity to miss, you know? Maybe someone else will get hurt on the 4x4 team, because I don't want to be the guy who falls on the last leg because I'm so afraid of running the 400 meters that I don't eat all day and then I nearly pass out. I can think these are real examples of someone who hated the feeling of losing, but also didn't believe that I had the self-confidence and the ability to change that, and then having to deal with that cognitive dissonance. So now, through bodybuilding and through the experiences, I remember the first time I really built that self-efficacy was my first competition season. You know, I had to really crush myself to get on stage and be, I looked like I belonged. I didn't do a good job. No one does their first time out. But then my next season in 2009, I was like, I don't care what it takes, but I will do it, whatever it takes to get striated glutes. And what I did to myself was objectively bad, traumatic, probably qualified as some type of disorder on some spectrum in some DSM manual. But I eventually got to the point where I was shredded. And in the previous versions of Eric's brain, wouldn't have gotten there at all, because we couldn't have believed I could do it. You know, it was too challenging, you know? So I think ultimately sport can be a facilitative process to give someone that feedback where they have to face it. They have to face the parts of them that don't believe they can be better.
Yeah. And I find that powerlifting, as our population that we're talking to mostly in this podcast is powerlifters or bodybuilders, right? Like you said, it's easier to get the feedback, not just, I mean, the way that you talked about it when you were in the gym, like it's 5 pounds every week, or like with meets, you can have meets more often. Generally, you can compete every year in powerlifting without injury, versus, like Eric said, that damn whole 2-year stint's gone with bodybuilding, dwelling on it. But also with physique sport and physique athletes, you're always in your body, and it's only sometimes competition ready. It's not just like, I competed, I did bad, damn, that sucks, I have 2 years of waiting. It's like, and within those 2 years, I have to deal with the mirror, deal with how, I guess the way it presents more often with us is like society / Instagram love us when we're shredded, and we have to, I say we because I've been there, and a lot of athletes get a lot of confidence, and their feedback is a lot of positive when they're looking a certain way. So the feedback that you might get quicker in performance-based sports, you can't get it as quickly with physique sport, and society gives you all those extra boosts only sometimes. And that's when it gets sticky, and that's why a lot of our job at 3D happens on the tail end of a prep. And we say that all the time, but it's so true.
Yeah, and I think that points towards something that Eric said, is where the individual is not focused on solely bodybuilding or powerlifting to elicit their confidence. They need to find the self-efficacy outside of that arena in order for it to transfer over. Or they can apply the same thing outside. It could be the inverse. It's just not focused on one area alone.
Which is so hard not to do in your first prep, especially first few preps.
Yeah, I think we're kind of talking about almost enduring self-efficacy. It's not just that you build it once, then you have it or you don't. It's that, I mean, Brandon and Alberto can tell you when they were with me in Hawaii in my first show of 2019 back in April, and I saw the pictures and I was like, what? That's me? Like, there was part of me that never thought I would achieve something that actually looked like kind of the physique I was going for way back in 2004 when I started lifting. And I had that,
2019.
Yes, April 2019, correct. And then I had that same feeling when I won the show in June, and then when I saw my pictures in July and I saw my pictures in August, I was just like, what? And then I had multiple months of looking at myself going, who the fuck is that in the mirror? That's not some like wannabe bodybuilder, which is what I kind of felt like I was in my head. Now, I had the self-efficacy back in 2009 and even 2007 to go through the process and get me there, but I thought, you know what, at least I'm not good enough, but at least I'll work hard to be not bad, you know? So it was something that kept building. And I think it's easy for someone who is been insecure for a long time to finally get rewarded and be like, oh, I'm good, to then take it too far and to latch onto it too much, kind of like the Icarus analogy of going towards the sun. And then they get their bell rung, you know, or they place last when they do their pro debut, or they enter a debate on Facebook and they realize how little they know about some topic, you know. I can think of this in the many domains that I do. And I think it's really important to, once you built your confidence, you think you know what you're doing, or you think you're good at X, Y, or Z, and you get your shit pushed in. And if that makes you, it'll probably send you right back to your old insecurities. Afraid, I'm not good enough. And you'll kind of have two paths ahead of you. I'm going to go hide in my hole and not come out again. Wow, apparently I thought I was this shit, and I'm actually just shit. I shouldn't say anything. I shouldn't post. I shouldn't compete. I'm not good enough. Or you go, man, I got my shit pushed in. Maybe I can learn from this. I can get better. And then you put your toe back in the water and you're like, okay, maybe I can swim again. And then you ultimately swim further. And so I think not only is it's like, as hard as it is to initially build that self-efficacy, to go out there and push yourself truly to your capabilities, but then once you've reached your current capabilities, you need to be tested and you need to fail, because then you have to ask yourself the question again, well, I did reach my current capabilities, but is that the end? Or do I really have a growth mindset? Do I actually have self-efficacy? Can I be better than even me 2 years ago when I pushed myself the hardest? And I think it's there's no finish line in this, you know. It's something that you have to keep revisiting and revising and falling down and getting back up, and then seeing, oh, I not only did I overcome that, I went further, or I learned something. There was some new rock to unturn or uncover and move forward. And I think it's very difficult to continually have that perspective if you came from a really, really insecure place. And that's why it's helpful to have friends and coaches and things like that, and people to give you feedback, etc., mentors.
Yeah, and like Berto says about happiness, to diversify your happiness portfolio, it sounds like we're kind of all saying same with confidence, right? Like we said sports is a good venue to build it for athletes and adults, right? Or lifting, changing yourself in that way. But if that's the only thing that brings you joy, or the only place where you feel like a valuable person, is when that negative feedback or that loss feels way worse than it probably needs to, right? If you're a little more well-rounded in what brings you confidence, self-worth, all that shit.
I just want to bring up something that I feel like we have hammer into our audience frequently. Is one, to of course keep the goal. Have goals, set goals. Shoot, like even extend it a little bit, like push yourself a little bit. But enjoy the process. That is the whole point. We're always going to be searching for more. If we're not enjoying it, what's the point? What's the point? And I think people who are low in the confidence arena, they look for those quick fixes because they're not willing to endure that process, or they think that it has to be torturous and too much work.
Yeah, that and also that there's, like we say, push yourself, but also pushing, like, depends how you view struggle, I guess, right? Like, I have a great time doing the edges of a one color jigsaw puzzle, and it is a struggle, let me tell you, right? Compared to being an athlete my whole life, I love that struggle. I love also sitting on the couch and watching Netflix. So it's like, pushing is important, but pushing doesn't always have to be hard. You also need times for relaxing. I know I've been in a place where, especially my first couple preps, where pushing was the only way I felt like I was doing shit at all. And then when the push is gone, I'm like, oh, well, life sucks because I'm not prepping. So diversifying where your efforts go, but like you said, Riz, always have something that requires effort, because otherwise you never feel like you've achieved anything if nothing was ever hard.
I don't want to put words in your mouth, Riz, but I think you're also saying that if you're only focused on the achievement, and this is obviously an enduring 3DMJ message, but it connects to what we're talking about with regards to self-efficacy. It always goes to the same place when you're focused on the outcome only. As soon as Ronnie Coleman, I was watching an interview with Ronnie Coleman, and he said, I squatted 800 for 2, but I wish I'd done 5. And I got my 8th Mr. Olympia, but I wanted 9. So no matter, even when you are quite literally the genetic elite, hardworking elite, the one, when you're the Wayne Gretzky, the Michael Jordan, the Ronnie Coleman of your calling, if you're achievement focused, it will never be good enough internally. Achievement begets more achievement when you get so focused on improving. And even when you are not insecure, even when you have self-confidence, even when you have self-efficacy, clearly Ronnie Coleman is not lacking self-efficacy. He's not lacking confidence.
Right.
He knows he's the best in the world. However, he said in this interview, I didn't get to enjoy any of it until I looked backward. That's kind of sad.
Wow.
And I think often in our Western mindset of sport, we think that's just the price. A champion can't be a champion and enjoy it at the moment. We think there has to be suffering. We think there has to be this win at all costs, only focused on winning, sacrifice everything. It's all these black and white terms. And I think what Amanda was pointing out is that, listen, there is no end to achievement. You can always add 1 to whatever you did. However, if you can look at the experience and go, hey, look at this. I am the guy who didn't even, I'll speak about Ronnie Coleman again. I was literally competing just to have a free gym membership. I was poor. I wasn't motivated about this. And now I'm on my potential 8th win with Mr. Olympia, and I'm getting paid a 6-figure salary every year from doing this thing that I previously didn't even really like, and I placed 16th, and it took me forever to get a pro card, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and going, holy shit, look at how I've grown. And I think some people think that you can't do that without resting on your laurels of being satisfied or thinking you have no further growth. And I don't see why that's the case. I think it's really, really important for people to acknowledge the fact that they have built self-efficacy rather than just using that to turbocharge the next win or the next barrier to overcome. And it's an easy thing to do. That's the other side of the coin. You know, sport is a great vehicle to build self-efficacy, but at the same time, it can end up just kind of forcing you on to focus only on the levels that you achieve rather than the fact that you can achieve levels.
That's a good square.
Thank you.
Good
Thank you.
square.
Like I specifically remember placing second in 2019. The same time I looked at, like, the cognitive dissonance made no sense. I'm looking at myself, oh my God, it's amazing. Best I ever looked. I couldn't believe I could ever look this way. And I lost. Like, did you lose or did you place second and look the best you ever did? Oh shit.
Yeah.
You know, no one's immune to it. Even someone who will spend an hour talking about this, you know, so.
Yeah. It's your focus on it, your focus and direction. Yeah, just with that Ron Coleman analogy, like he was just focusing on the next level, and not enjoying it, not looking back like, wow, I've achieved a lot. And I'm sure if he would have done that, he would have enjoyed it just a little bit more.
Yeah. Well, we also have to, like, I guess maybe acknowledge that, like, there's different people enjoy different things. Like you said, you named like all these top athletes, Eric, and like a lot of them you said had this like tunnel vision, and this is what, you know, hella people wrote about this with Kobe recently too in this past year. And it's like, when we hear all the greats and we idolize the greats, it's always backwards. And like you said, it's always what we see. But in order for them to have had a 20-year career or whatever, obviously, if you think about it, I don't want to say obviously, it has to be that to do something for 20 years, 30 years, whatever, you know, we've seen people burn out in 3 years or burn out in 5 years with that same mentality. So it's like,
it's self-evidently sustainable.
Yeah, it's obviously it was sustainable for 20 years. So yes, we look at them and we think, damn, they did nothing but eat, sleep, whatever. But it's like also they obviously had off seasons. They obviously found ways to make the commercial to support their brand so that when they were done, they had money. You know, like there's...
No, you're totally right. We put that on them. That's not their fault. Yeah. So like another thing that surprised the hell out of me was Ronnie said, yeah, I take 3 months off after every Olympia. And I was like, what? And he's like, yeah, the time I got hurt, that was the one time I didn't take off. I got right back into it. And then that's when I hurt myself. And I was like, no one talks about the fact that Ronnie Coleman takes 3 months off.
He's the poster boy for go hard. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But he does. You're right. So I think a lot of the times it's our fascination with the archetype of the champion rather than what really goes into being a champion. Not to say that there isn't sometimes an unhealthy relationship with the sport or et cetera or whatever, but it doesn't have to be what we think a champion looks like, you know?
Right. And I think a lot of I shouldn't say that. I observe, maybe I imagine that in our sports, I know from what I hear from a lot of young athletes or like view a lot on Instagram and on our page or whatever, is that the lack of confidence / insecurity almost always comes out of comparison. And if we're comparing ourselves to the archetype of a physique sport, it is the millions of followers, all time shredded, like all that, you know, all that stuff. And so as much as I literally get so tired of talking about how, you know, there's a lot of points in here that are going to maybe be reflected in another podcast we've had with those, maybe about body dysmorphia, or maybe about, I don't know what. But it's because social media, because society, because external expectations they're not going away. If anything, they're becoming more readily available because internet. And so, you know, it's hard for an adolescent or a young person in a new activity, and by young, I just mean like not a bunch of years under their belt, they might be middle-aged or whatever, to be even more insecure than maybe they would have been 50 years ago when all they had to compare themselves to was like the people at the gym.
Yep. Well, I mean, let's face it. So we live in a society where achievement is seen as the goal in life in one form or another, and there are certain societal standards depending on which society you enter, whether it's the bodybuilding society, the evidence-based, or whatever. Wherever you go, there is some level of achievement which is typically rewarded. And the more obvious that comparison is to others, because it is hierarchical and achievement-oriented, and even when you're just focused on yourself, like in powerlifting, just moving the numbers forward, the knee-jerk reaction is one of focusing on comparison and dealing with your insecurity by any of these coping methods we talked about, right? And so, therefore, we kind of are championing the same message, which is saying, hey, we've got another coping strategy for you, and it's, facilitative rather than debilitative. It's adaptive, if I may, Amanda, being able to reframe why you compete, why you lift, why you train, and have a continual dialogue with yourself of why I do this and what I'm getting out of it, rather than just having what do I look like or how strong am I as the outcome. It gives you an opportunity to participate in this, not thinking that one day I won't be shit if I just keep working hard enough, but I will improve that aspect. I can have that. I can try to make my physique better. I can try to get stronger. I can have that objective, extrinsic outcome that I maybe do compare to others. And I also enjoy this for what it teaches me about myself, build self-efficacy, and I have an intrinsic motivation and enjoyment of the process and all these things. But there's not enough people talking about that. It's almost always like we're a counter message. And until we're no longer a counter message, we kind of have to keep saying the same thing, because every day there's somebody posting a picture of them flexing in front of a Lamborghini selling you some supplement, or a documentary about an athlete that glorifies this limited sliver of what we see, like you were talking about, Andrea, that maybe is not emphasizing the sustainable parts and how they balance their time with their family or take time off, or read books in their off time, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, I think part of our jobs as coaches and therapists is to point those things out. Point out when we see a client or an athlete like beating up on themselves and just not recognizing their achievements or comparing themselves to others. Be like, hey, slow things down. You're doing okay. And then list out concrete examples of how they have achieved, how they have improved when it comes to those individuals that lack the self-confidence.
Yeah. And I mean, over and over, that's literally, for the listeners, when we're coaching our athletes through a prep, that you, as someone who's been an athlete on that side of it and who has been a coach on that side of it, shit has to be repeated week after week after week. And it's not sugarcoating. It's not fluffing their feathers or whatever. It's like what I mean. It's what keeps them going and keeps keeps the goal. I know I've said it 1,000 times, but it sounds fucking weird, but that's literally a big part of the job is reminders. Like get your head back where it's supposed to be. Get your head back where it's like Eric's nodding, but it's like.
And most of the time they fight you.
Yeah.
Like you're awesome. I think you did really good. You did X, Y, and Z. No, I'm shit. That's kind of a little microcosm of it. Like some people might like, oh God, these 3DMJ coaches are just cheerleaders. Like, no, most of the time our athletes hate themselves, or not most of the time, but a lot of the times, and what we're talking about here is the athlete is incapable of seeing anything except the bad. And that's driving them to these maladaptive training approaches of going too hard or quitting or dropping out of shows, or either end of the spectrum that we talked about. That's essentially the same thing. Faking it till they make it, and or giving up, or
program hopping. That's the one.
Yeah, the grass has got to be greener because, whatever. So, Amanda, I want to ask you if you don't. I don't want to try to take over the hosting or anything like that, Andrea. But I'm curious. Okay. So when you've got someone who's maybe leaning more narcissistic, or you've got someone leaning more, say, fatalistic, like fuck it, why do I even do this? I'm going to give up. Or I'm the Masters 3 novice Central Valley second place champion, but I consider it first because I think it was politics. I'm pretty sure that I saw one of the judges was Facebook friends with the guy who placed first, so I'm almost positive it's politics. Like, how do you help both of those people getting towards facing their insecurity? It's got to be a different strategy for people on opposite ends of the
Yeah,
coping
there would be a different strategy. I'll start off with the one that's just what some people would say is just very into themselves. I would point out or have them identify, okay, so why are you here today? What do you want to improve on? What sort of skills do you have to get you there? And how have you seen that play out? Like, I want to know concrete examples of how things are working out for them and how are they functioning again. And have them kind of have reality checks. If they're saying this, where's the evidence? And then for the inverse, I would want them to focus more on the positive, to see where those small improvements are, seeing how the universe is not working against them, and slowly build that self-efficacy and do smaller tasks where they know they can execute and know where the areas that they do perform well, and then just expand that more with small attainable goals.
It's funny, the semi-narcissist example that we used, you said, why are you here again? And that's a really good point, because a lot of the people, like the archetype we were using to describe that person, that made up kind of image that I helped conjure in everyone's heads who's listening, wouldn't even have walked into Amanda's office or wouldn't have hired us in the first place. So I think if you're listening and you can identify those traits in yourself of, like I did mention that I placed second in that meet without saying that there's only 2 people so that I would feel better about it in this mixed company. Like, you probably, if you're going to hire a coach or if you're working with someone or if you're just thinking about yourself and your own self-development, like those moments where you bend the truth or only expose certain things, I think it's a really good opportunity to look at what were your motivations to do that for. Pull that thread. It's not going to go anywhere fun, but it's the only way, I think we talked about, is to face those cognitive dissonances, to face those uncomfortable things, and then eventually get to that, do I have a nugget in me that doesn't think I can change or improve? Am I holding myself back from even giving the option of being not X, Y, or Z? I think, what Amanda said makes a lot of sense, but there's a lot of people who are not even at the point yet where, from the narcissist perspective, they have to actually acknowledge that they're not amazing, or that they're that is stemming from something, to then walk into the office and say, hey, functionally this is holding me back. I want to change. And then on the other end of the spectrum, the person who just is beating themselves up all the time, they have to actually believe they're worthy of therapy and change to actually get it, So there's a barrier on either end. The narcissist who's fully bought into their own narcissism and does not allow themselves through a defense mechanism to see their insecurity won't be there yet. Likewise, the person who is just completely fatalistic and thinks they are human garbage is never going to walk into a therapist's office either. So it's a tough one.
So do they come for other things first and then you dig that up, Rizzo?
When someone's more on the narcissistic side?
Yeah, like how do they... Is it like court mandated or something?
It could certainly be court mandated. Those are fun. But I would say with those individuals, they start noticing like relationships aren't working out, or they want to achieve something and they can't figure it out. How can they manipulate the situation? It's still very external based. Like, these people aren't working out for me. Like, how do I manage this? Yeah.
Interesting.
That would be the case.
So they're so confident that they can change other people and they want to learn how to do that better. That's funny. It's not funny.
They go to couples therapy like, hey, I'm here to help you fix my wife.
Yeah, there it is.
And then they find out, oh, I'm actually part of the problem.
Or fix my child. Yes.
Yes.
Oh. Well, that's a whole other podcast that we're not equipped to deal with on this show.
No, that would be the Amanda with Amanda podcast. Well, I think this has been really, really cool discussion. I think
Yes.
ultimately, I think it's going to help people understand the value of taking a moment, pausing, looking inward, being patient with yourself, and looking inward and figuring out, why am I doing what I'm doing? What am I trying to get out of what I'm doing? And how am I holding myself back? And do I really believe I can change? Because I think that's ultimately what self-confidence is your belief in your ability to be dynamic rather than static.
That's a good one. And if you need some help with that, we know a lady who works with people who help with that.
Come my way.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That'll be in the show notes if you want to reach out to Rizzo. And it's also always on our About page. And with that, any other parting words, Riz, before we hang up here?
Just, I guess I would say something more profound. Believe in your power. Find ways to feel good. And revel in those moments. That'll increase the self-efficacy and your confidence overall.
Yeah, because believe it or not, everyone has moments. Everyone has good moments.
Yeah, we all have moments.
I think that's another thing, not to extend this, but some people don't give themselves the permission to celebrate a success because they didn't really earn it if they're insecure.
Mm.
You know? Same people, like, you can't take a
Yes.
compliment. That's a great example. You know, like, no, the stars aligned and I did well on this. Don't compliment me. I didn't do it, you know? So I think
Right.
just getting better at taking compliments and reveling in your success is a great first and practical step.
Perfect.
Awesome.
All right. Thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Hey there, this is Coach Eric Helms. Thanks so much for listening to our show. 3DMJ prides itself on keeping this show, our blog, and our YouTube channel as free and relevant sources of information for our community week after week. We also release additional free video courses as often as possible at 3dmjvault.com. If you'd like to help support our mission and our work, please consider becoming a monthly patron of our endeavors. Go to patreon.com/team3dmj and donate just a couple dollars per month to our cause to help educate and grow the drug-free bodybuilding and powerlifting communities worldwide. You can definitely choose to donate more, and if you do so, we'll send you discount codes for future use on any of our paid products. But any little bit helps, and we appreciate your monthly support in any amount you see fit. So again, you can start assisting the team by going to patreon.com/team3dmj. That's patreon.com/team3dmj. Thanks for sticking around, and we'll see you in the next show.